Welcome to today's meeting of the Health and Social Care Select Committee at the London Borough of Hillingdon. This meeting is being broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon London. The purpose of this committee is to monitor services provided by health partners in adult social care and review their performance. We also undertake in-depth reviews and witness sessions on specific topics and submit our findings to the decision-making cabinet. My name is Councillor Nick Denys and I'm chair of this committee. Before we start, I have some important housekeeping for everyone present. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow Nikki out of the building. Please keep your microphones muted when you aren't speaking, then unmute to speak. As chair, I'll call on those to speak during the meeting. It's worth noting that some of the councillors in this committee may be using devices to access the agendas and papers for this meeting. Excellent. So now we're going to move on to the agenda. Nikki, do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, we have no apologies for absence today.
Fantastic. Okay, any declarations of interest? No, we're all good, thank you. Minutes of the meeting of the 20th of January. Any comments or are we happy? We're happy. Fantastic, thank you. Item 4, exclusion of press and public. Everything's in public, correct? Brilliant, fantastic. Okay, so we move on to item 5, but item 5 is going to be deferred to a future meeting. So we have had a message from the Assistant Director of Direct Care and Business Delivery, who said that the commissioning plan relies on the formation of a revised commissioning team. This requires a departmental restructure that has not yet been completed. Until this restructure is in place, we are not in a position to present a fully developed commissioning plan to the committee. We anticipate being able to bring this item forward later in the year once the necessary organisational changes have been implemented. So we will obviously get an update of when that's possible.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us on to item 6, which is the Hillingdon Healthcare Partnership Transformation Update 27, and the main speaker is going to be Keith Spence from Hillingdon Healthcare Partners, but others are willing to join in if they wish to. I don't know if they will wish to, but anyway. But Keith, do you want to sort of just talk about some of the highlights in the paper?
Thank you, Chair, and Happy New Year. It's the first time I've been to scrutiny since the turn of the year. Always a pleasure to be here. So what we've done, Chair, is the report you've got here provides assurance on the progress of the Hillingdon Health and Care Partnership Transformation Programme. As usual, I'm going to focus on two components that have at least been consistent over the last 2 to 3 years of integrated neighbourhood teams, which is our proactive care model, and reactive care, which is our community response and discharge system. And what I'll set out is we are beginning to see measurable impact of the programme that we're implementing. I'll try and describe what is driving that improvement, what it means for residents, the risks that remain and we're actively managing, and then the priorities for the next 3 to 6 months. So that's very briefly how the paper is structured, and I think the key message I wanted to give to the committee this evening is that we are now seeing measurable system-wide improvement across Hillingdon in terms of the implementation of the transformation programme. Emergency demand is reducing. Between June and December 2025, A&E attendances at the Hillingdon Hospital fell by just under 5% compared to the same period last year. Despite population growth and sustained winter pressure, we were the only borough in North West London for whom the ED demand actually fell in that period. Hospital flow has materially improved. No criteria to reside, which is one of those dreadful phrases the NHS comes up with to describe patients in hospital without a clinical reason to remain, reduced by just over a third. From 50 to 33 per day, and by December, fewer than 4% of Hillingdon hospital beds were occupied by patients who did not clinically need to be there, significantly better than the wider North West London and London averages. To put that into context, 4% in Hillingdon, across North West London the average was 14%, and across London 12%. For residents with severe frailty, and I think you begin to hear a lot more about frailty in the next 12 months, around 5,000 people in Hillingdon. Emergency admissions for that cohort have reduced by 36%, and I think Sean will correct me if I get this wrong. But if you look at the trajectory for the new hospital assumptions, on all of the measures bar one, which I'll come on to in a moment, we are either at or below the trajectory for that. and I mean that in a positive way, not a negative way. So I think that's important. The improvement, you would expect me to say, is not accidental. It's not a freak of the time of the year. It does reflect deliberate service changes that we've made. First, integrated neighbourhood teams, something which Kim is very familiar with. We now have 3 fully established neighbourhood teams, bringing together GPs and community nursing, adult social care, mental health and voluntary sector partners, and they are proactively managing frailty, long-term conditions in high-risk residents. We have now started to develop some credible same-day alternatives to hospital. As you know, I think we've discussed at this meeting on a number of occasions now. We've expanded urgent same-day primary care. I think you heard about pharmacy first or last meeting. Our community IV therapy, intravenous antibiotics, which used to take place in a hospital setting, can now be done in a community setting. And we've implemented mobile diagnostics back in November, and that is working well. And we've built up some really interesting case studies in terms of seeing people in second floor flats and in care homes, which we couldn't have done before. Third, mental health crisis pathways, and the Lighthouse, which is a diversion to ED on the Hillingdon Hospital site, is now diverting patients away from the ED department. Capacity has now expanded from 6 to 10 places per day. On average, Hillingdon Hospital will get around 8 people with purely a mental health challenge turning up at the ED department. And then the fourth area is the discharge and reactive care. And the biggest flow improvement that we've had there has been, if I'm honest, around disciplined end-to-end discharge management. And we've put in place a number of changes to try and shorten the timelines. And every Thursday, I chair what's called a place goal command. Sean sits with me on that along with hospital, adult social care, and we literally go through all patients who are delayed for more than 48 hours and look at the reasons why they are there. On every bar one, I will come on to the bar one. There's always a bar one, isn't it, in some ways. On every discharge metric, we outperform all of the North West London boroughs. I think it's fair to say. One area we don't, and that's P2, and that are people who are waiting either for rehab or a long-term care placement in a nursing home, where we're outside the North West London average, and it's an area that we want to focus on. But those no criteria have reduced significantly by about a third. And you remember, if Jason Sees was sitting here, he'd tell you the magic figure is 34 for the new hospital, and we got that to below 33 just before Christmas. It goes up and down, and we have to manage that. So for residents, fewer avoidable hospital visits, faster response when needs escalate, and more care delivered close to home. However, there are risks, and it takes more than a quarter to turn around a significant number of years of challenge that we've had, and we're not complacent. So the winter resilience remains fragile, and that's very clear. Embedding new models across neighbourhoods, I think, requires real discipline and perseverance. And actually, it's embedding these things into business as usual is always the challenge. It's not sustainable for us to have once a week very senior executives looking at 48-hour discharges. That's got to become the norm for how we operate, and we're looking at that as we speak. And again, after Christmas, there's been a surge with flu and other areas, and that has tested the ED department significantly in that period of time. But what we have been able to do is to recover quickly, which in its sense is good. In terms of the next 6 months, what we have to do is we have to expand that frailty case management from 5,000 to around 10,000, because that's what moves the dial. That's what we're doing. We'll fully mobilise our reactive care hub, which is our coordination hub that we have, and then we will be expanding our urgent community response and starting to implement a hospital at home service as well. Completing the business case of the neighbourhood health hubs. I seem to have spent my life the last 3 years talking about neighbourhood health hubs. We expect to have completed that business case in the next 2 months or so for 3 hubs across Hillingdon. And what we will be doing shortly is reviewing the impact of mobile diagnostics ahead of a decision whether to fully roll it out in in the next financial year. So I think that the message I wanted to give to the board is not hopeless optimism, but actually that the changes that you have painfully listened to me describe over the last 2 years are beginning to have some effect. And I think that's really important for what we're trying to do, we're trying to do in Hillingdon. I'd pause there, Chair, I think, but obviously you'll see the data in the pack.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you and all of those people you work with to make Hillingdon Care Partnership a partnership and a true partnership, because I attend North West London sort of scrutiny meetings, and I think the partnership element is something that we do very seriously and very well compared to many others, which is super. And you are right, we have seen this journey, and at the beginning there was an amazing PowerPoint with like graphs and graphics, so it is really encouraging now to see this working together and sort of trying to reform things in order to deliver the best delivery, making a difference. That is really good. So that's really positive. So thank you so much. And that involves energy, not just PowerPoint slides. Obviously, it involves energy within the sort of health structure. So my first question actually you actually touched on it, because when I looked at the risk, the one risk that wasn't there was essentially the sort of embedding in the management of it, because ultimately this is about working together and working together well, and across the NHS that doesn't always happen because some of the drivers are territorial. So what's going to be done to make sure that the ways of working are embedded so they become normal in Hillingdon, so they don't go backwards?
So I think if I start with the discharge piece first, because if you look at the trajectory of where we need to be by 2030 for the new hospital, on all the metrics bar one, we are either at or approaching where we need to be. The one area where we're not there yet is on the length of stay that people stay in a hospital bed. And so the work that we have to do is we have to change the way the discharge processes and the discharge team work in the hospital in order to make the changes and make the benefits sustainable. And that's a piece of work we're literally doing at the moment, because I've pointed out it just isn't sustainable to have the sort of input that we're currently giving there. So some changes taking place. We're having discussions with Alan at the hospital and with Sandra and with Claire Murdoch as well, about how we do that and how we build that challenge in. In terms of deflecting people from the front door, there's work still to do. And one of the things we're doing this year is expanding our urgent community response service, and that's yet to fully embed. So I think we need to keep our eye on that. And what I'm looking at, the metrics will be interesting. Sean and I were talking this morning on mobile diagnostics, because what I was expecting to see is the number of care home attendances at hospital reduce, because it's particularly focused there. So I think we need to see what happens in the next quarter, and we need to see whether these numbers continue. But we have booked the trend, and I think we've learned an awful lot in the last 3 to 6 months.
And my second question is about the targeted Heathrow Villages outreach, obviously an area that, again, we've talked about a lot over the last X amount of years. It's good to see that there's another plan to sort of improve the outreach in Heathrow Villages, because certain things have been tried, some have worked okay, some of them definitely haven't worked. So, yeah, just describe how that will work a little bit more, but also how you're going to assess and make sure that it works well.
So what we've done, as you'll know, Councillor, we've worked closely with the villages. I think it's been an honest and frank conversation with the villages, and I think the breakthrough there has been working with the local community assets which are there. So if I just take Armondsworth as an example, we've worked closely with the church, and the church is keen to encourage more people to come. So what we've agreed to do is to use the church, the hall, and the church itself as a waiting area, so that we can actually have outreach general GP services there, some mental health services there, and also what we're going to do, and you'll hear in a little minute, we're going to have a community champion working just for the Heathrow Villages, because one of the things I think we have to accept is that access there There are barriers to access in the Heathrow villages, and one of the things we want to do is to base a community champion who will work with the local community there to understand particularly the mental health impact. So we're in the process of recruiting that at the moment, and we'll actually use health and equity inequality funding to do that. So I think we've worked with the villages. We've found a local resource there that we can use, and the vicars there are really keen to establish that, and will make that work for us, I think, in that way. And I think it will attract, in that way, it will attract resources. So I'm grateful. The local community has been really helpful in trying to establish, because we've looked at a whole range of options there, from buses to porter cabins, and we finally settled on a solution which is actually rooted in the community, which is a proper lesson for us all, I think, from that. So it will be between March and the end of May. We'll have all of those services up and running on a progressive basis.
Well, we look forward to hearing the feedback on how that goes. Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Well done on some of the statistics. I can only imagine the challenges and the winter presents to you. If there is, on behalf of the residents, though, when they hear there's a 5% reduction in people using the ED services, tangibly, what does that look like for residents? What does that look like for their waiting times? What sort of reduction does that present? What sort of reduction in corridor care does that represent? And how does it affect the staff? Do they notice that there's improvements in the ED department, because it's high pressured, obviously? Thank you.
I'm going to dredge this figure from my memory, so you might correct me. So if you look at the ED waits across northwest London, I think Hillingdon Hospital in that last quarter was either the best or the second best in terms of the shortest waits in ED. So from the residents' point of view, they are waiting a shorter period of time when they have to go to ED. Because we're putting on alternatives, what that means is, where have the 5% gone to? The 5% have gone to alternatives that we've got in a community setting, which means they wait less. So from that perspective, it is fundamentally about the amount of time people will wait in an ED department, and the number of 12-hour breaches has significantly reduced to Hillingdon and Hospital. And I'm sure if Alan were here, he'd tell you that too.
Thank you. And just, I read that the winter pressures and you have the use of contingency beds. I'm just curious where you source the contingency beds from, and if there's an availability of contingency beds in the winter, can that be rolled through to the summer when there's pressures in other times?
So we strongly discourage the use of escalation contingency beds. What that effectively will mean, that additional beds will be placed onto wards, and we won't be there aren't additional wards that we open up. It's additional beds put into into ward footprints, and what we want to get to a position of is not having to do that, because I'm sure if Alan were here he'd say the same thing. It's not ideal. That is not ideal care to be doing that. And my experience is, going back a long time, if you keep a spare ward, you will fill it, because it is the easy solution.
Councillor Punja.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Keith. They're really, really happy with the progress of what's happening now with this integrated neighbourhood teams, and how, my God, our hospital and community are working together. Could you just clarify what P2 meant, because I think you said it but I didn't understand it, or I didn't hear it properly. But also, what is the strategy to improve that sector, if that's the one key area that we need improvement in? But what are the plans to improve that?
So this used to be your old stomping ground, Kim, didn't it? So if I start, we have P0, P1, P2, P3. P0 are people who can go home without support. They can just go home, be discharged and go home. P1s are people who will go home but with support, either from a nurse or from a local authority support. The lengths of delay for those are small, less than a day, 1 to 2 days. You know? The big challenge are the P2s. The P2s are made of two components. They are made up of people who are waiting either for a NHS health rehabilitation bed, and we have a ward called HICU, Hawthorne Intermediate Care. They said intensive care unit, and wrong impression that we give them. Yeah, and they are for people who need a short-term of inpatient rehab. The largest cohort of the P2s are people who are awaiting long-term care home placement, and as it was last week, half of our delays, half of our people not trained to reside, were P2, half from Hillingdon, and half from other boroughs. And what we've seen is a material shift in the balance of that cohort. We now have more people from other North West London boroughs waiting in hospital than we traditionally had. So that a year ago, the balance of P2 between Hillingdon and non-Hillingdon was 80-20. 80% Hillingdon, 20% other boroughs. It was 50-50 last week. And the reason for that, I believe, is that we're a victim of our own success. During the winter, when other hospitals have to go on divert, ED departments, they will divert to Hillingdon. So London North West and Norfolk Park will divert to Hillingdon. So patients will come here from Ealing. They will be in Hillingdon hospital beds, and then we have to obviously discharge them to Ealing, and we have less control over discharges to Ealing or to other North West London boroughs than to others, and that's been a significant shift. And they delay, on average, their delay is around 10 days for Hillingdon patients and around 23 days delay days for other London boroughs. The North West London standard is 5 days. So it gives you a sense of that big cohort. So what we've been looking at recently, the proposals that we've come up with are data-driven. So we've looked at the time it takes from when a patient is medically optimised to the time it takes them to be discharged. You break that down into the component parts. And what we've been trying to get the wards to do is to refer earlier in the process before the patient is medically optimised, so that for those placements, long-term care, there's more time to organise the care. And statistically, if we reduced that by that delay from 10 days for Hillingdon down to 7, actually it would keep us sustainably below the 34. So it's a small shift. It's just a small shift in that. But they're more difficult to place. And if Sandra Taylor was here, she'd be saying the same thing. They are more difficult for us to place. Because we are constrained in Hillingdon for care home beds, but actually it's more difficult in other North West London boroughs, because if I was honest, the other North London boroughs will look after their patients in their hospitals first before they're looking after people in the hospitals in Hillingdon. So it's a complex bit of work that we're doing, but we're trying to shorten the process by just streamlining what we do and getting the wards to refer earlier so that we can manage that process quite quickly. And we've learned a phenomenal amount over the last 6 months. Just by getting involved more in that piece of work.
Thank you. Councillor Hagger.
Thank you, Chair. Definitely, you can really see, massive lines of improvement in working patterns, and prevention I'm seeing is coming out quite big. So obviously we're setting targets beforehand, and that's really helping later on. But what do we expect to see in the future for improvements to sustainability for the whole thing? So we were talking earlier, you were saying obviously we're expanding, so from 5 to 10,000, and how is that, what are we looking at figure-wise for future and the sustainability of it all as soon as we start to increase? Thank you.
What it might be worth Hollis bringing, Chicks, it's a really, really important question, is the trajectories. So what we do is we have a 5-year trajectory, but from now until new hospital is built. And the importance of having a new hospital is that it's a real burning platform for making changes to what we do outside of the hospital. So we have a trajectory that we have to meet to have a viable new hospital. And what we do is we track where we are against that trajectory, and we time the interventions to deliver that. So if I take hypertension, if I just take one areas, which is an area that Kim, I'm sure, can do, is we know around a third, 30% of the population at any one time has hypertension. And we know that if we can get, in effect, get better able to identify those people who've got hypertension, and we can get that figure to around 24%, and of that, if we can get 80% of that with their blood pressure in control, it will reduce strokes and heart attacks by about a third. Yeah? So over the course of the next 5 years, we have a trajectory on 2 fronts to get, we're currently, I think, 14% in our hypertension prevalence. We need to get it to 24%, and our current control is around just under 80%. So we've got a trajectory to try and get to that, because that's how we get upstream what it is now for those other measures. So for the EDs, the length of stay, and for no criteria to reside, we have to hold the levels that we've now got. We have to hold it at the levels that we've got and keep it and keep it there. There's a danger in peaking too early, but I'd rather peak too early than not peak at all, to be honest.
Councillor Bells.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for the report, Keith. It's very encouraging. I remember it's been like putting goat's teeth out sometimes, or hen's teeth is the word. Sometimes, but it's good to see everything come together. Just a couple of questions, really. I'm quite interested on the hubs. A bit more information on the hubs, if you can provide any. And I'll follow up after that.
So, I didn't have any grey hair when I started working on estate issues. So the current plan is we have a plan for 3 hubs. The current preferred, I'm sure I've told committee this before, but please forgive me if I haven't. One at Noel Nestle site in the south-west neighbourhood. I get this. Thank you. In the south-east neighbourhood. My geography is great. We are looking at the Civic Centre here in terms of one for the south-west neighbourhood, and the north neighbourhood, Pembroke, in Ruislip. What we have to do, we believe that to develop those into 2,500 square metre neighbourhood hubs, which is the size we need to build, it requires around £30 million worth of capital to be found, roughly around £10 million per hub. And obviously we need to be able to address the revenue consequences of £30 million worth of capital. So we're currently putting the business case together, working with the ICB in terms of doing that, to look at ways in which we believe we can fund that and make those real over the next 1 to 3 years. And those hubs will house the staff groups that we've talked about, and each of those super hubs will have something called a local access hub, which will bring you a wider range of services, such as services which are left shifted from the hospital. So we've got an agreed list of services with the hospital that will start to be provided in those local centres and will come out of the hospital. The diagnostics that we've talked about, the mental health hub, MSK, physio, OT and pharmacy, all the components that you need to manage frailty in a community setting. So that's the plan, and the business case we're in the middle now of going through. We're putting a business case together which would satisfy the Treasury if required to do that. We hope it doesn't have to go to the Treasury, but obviously that's where we currently are. We expect that business case to be done probably by the end of March, end of April.
Thank you. Good luck. Just on the other thing I'm looking at was the increase in the Lighthouse mental health, the increase in up to 10 places per day. Has any staffing? Have you had any staffing impact on that at all?
So, I'm sure you may be in a better place to answer this one. Do you want to pick this one up?
Yeah, I can do. I don't know the specific staffing models, but basically the Lighthouse has been running for probably a couple of years, and we've been looking at redesigning that and how we can deliver care slightly better. And they've brought in fact, I've got a slide here somewhere, my computer's turned off. They have brought in doctor support, consultant support, pharmacy support, so they can actually treat patients and support them in that unit. They removed some of the beds and stuff and made it more of a comfortable sitting area, because actually the plan is that patients shouldn't be going in there for days. It should be going in there, supporting them and moving them to where they need to be thereafter. The expansion initially started in December, and we've long length of stay for patients that are in there. On average they could be in there up to 3 days whilst they move on to the next place. And what we've seen is we've gone from an average of 1 patient per day, but obviously that's more people in because they're in for longer, to seeing just under 4 patients a day. I think we've seen a 56% improvement in length of stay. So on average, patients are there now under a day. And actually, I've got some of the statistics in my computer that's locked at the moment. But what we're seeing is, I think around 67% of those patients are now going home. We are seeing the majority of the referrals now are taking place from either A&E or UTC. So patients aren't having to go into A&E, wait there for hours, and then move across. They're actually being taken earlier because there's closer working between the Lighthouse and the UTC and ED department staff, and so patients can come through a lot earlier. So it's been ramping up with activity, which is good. We're seeing patients go home, which is good, with the support they need, but also identified to go on to some of the retreats, inpatient wards if required. So the patients are being seen faster, better, and provided sort of more longer term care for the ones that need it, but actually being able to be treated on site and then can go home with support from the community team. But yes, there has been an increase in staff. At the moment, I know that they are doing that through bank staff and stuff, but they have gone out to recruitment to recruit staff permanently in order to support the unit.
Great, thank you very much. And so we'll draw this item to a close now, but before we draw it to a close, Keith, thank you so much for all your hard work and all the partners that you work with, because we have been on this journey with you, obviously only every sporadic updates, but we know how long it's taken and how much effort's been put in. So obviously we want it to be maintained and built on, so we're not going to stop scrutinising it, but it's a very positive story, so thank you for all the work that's been done. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 7, which is an update on the CAMHS referral pathway review that this committee did a couple of years ago, and obviously for those of us who were on the committee then remember that how we looked into what was happening in CAMHS and how patients were experiencing the service, including the families of the young people, and we came up with a bunch of recommendations about how things could possibly be improved. So we're looking forward to hearing what's happened. So who wants to start?
So I'll do an introduction, Chair. So first of all, to welcome Andrea Shand, who has just joined CNWL as a service director for CAMHS and eating disorders. It's the first time you've been, I think.
Yeah.
So you're very, very welcome. So first of all, an apology, Chair. Obviously, our two experts on this, John Bettles, who's led this work in the ICB, and Vanessa Odden, are on leave. So I'm afraid you have got the B team here this evening. So if there's any questions we can't answer, then obviously we will make sure we get we get an answer to you. So if it's okay with you, Chair, we'll just split this into two parts. Sean, who's John's boss, this will put you on the spot, is going to talk to you about Thrive, the work we've done on Thrive. And then what I'm pleased is Kim Rice has come to talk to us about a really successful piece of work we've just done in the South West neighbourhood, the neighbourhood right this time, haven't I? In a children and young persons coordinator, which is a form of community champion that we're thinking of implementing in the Heathrow villages. So if I invite Sean, it's just to start first, and then I'm sure Kim will come in on this, and then Andrea, you are a subject matter expert. Sean. Yeah.
So I'll give you a very brief update, but I've actually got access to the, I call it draft non-live website for Thrive. So if it's okay, what I was going to do is give you a quick run through, because I think that's going to talk a lot better than anything I can say. So whilst I click this in, I'm hoping technology works for me. It's doing something. There you go. Okay.
If your Netflix seat had to come up there, that's...
Yeah. Right. So, does everyone know about the Thrive stuff, or shall I just give a quick...
There are a couple of new committee members, I think, so do give a...
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk very quickly around the brief that John gave me, and then I'll give us a quick 5-minute run through of the website. So borough-wide, we've adopted the Thrive framework, which is a whole system model for children and young people, supporting emotional well-being and mental health, which is looking to shift it from sort of crises and thresholds to needs-led early intervention, shared responsibility. And what we've done is we've placed the Thrive website with links to the local authority and it's part of the Stronger Families programme. So trying to align and bring the services together rather than having them fragmented. And what I'm going to show you in a minute is you'll see some of the digital directory, which actually is going to go live in March this year. And what it does is it maps the full local early intervention and prevention offer. It provides a clear service directory. It will show the referral routes and offer a number of self-care tools and crisis contacts that you can go to. And it should support families while they're waiting for specialist input. To get to this point, it's been coming for a fair while. There's been some strong multi-agency implementation across the board, and there's been some really sort of large-scale professional events and family events actually. And I haven't got the family event written on here, but I've seen it somewhere. I remember there was an event that took place at the Hillingdon Athletics track, and I think there was over some 1,400 families or attendees that went, and everyone came together and worked on that. On the professional type event, which was held in April last year, that brought together over 200 partners all across health, education, local authority and voluntary sector organisations. To kind of get to some of this here, and it's looking at structured programme management, cross-sector engagement and a co-production with children, young people and families. The approach is no wrong door. It's replacing the rigid thresholds and enabling that sort of early access, valid access point, not being redirected without support. So it's just, sorry, that's not us, that's someone else. It's hopefully seeing patients, families, children through all of their things. And then there's going to be some ongoing evaluation and feedback loops in order to work through some of those. So what I'll do quickly now, if that's okay, is I'm hoping this works. I am on the guest Wi-Fi, but this is the home page as you go in. And like I say, you don't have access to this at the moment, but I was given a special password. So as we move down, and you'll see that this is where you come into a bit of a difference between self-care and then the professional support that you can get. So if I click on the not feeling yourself one, under here, oh great.
I knew that was going to happen.
Wait one sec, let me just try it. I've teased you all now.
Yes, the little globe there, isn't it?
I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me do my hotspot quickly. If it doesn't work, I will give you a quick talk through because I did prepare for this earlier.
I think you've just written that front page before you came out.
It was. Oh, there you go. Look.
Very good, isn't it?
Ah, that's why. It switched my network. Oh, right, we're back in business. Right. Sorry. So, I've clicked on the self-care one, and what you can do is you can work through it. I mean, it gives a little bit of an introduction. You know, you can explain. I won't read through everything, but then there's a number of areas that you can look to provide and just get an understanding or read up a little bit more. So you've got social self-care, spiritual, physical, managing your appetite, and then sort of managing your sleep. Some of them are quite short, some of them are more detailed, so I'll click on the managing your sleep one. It's one of the more detailed ones, and it just explains, it understands what people can get going through. Probably helps to read through with a child or something like that. You know, you can read through it, but then actually some of the things, you know, avoiding screens before bed sort of explains what that can do. Talking about the environment, how can you make it a safer place? More practical, so a little tidy up before you go to bed, make sure it's dark and quiet, all the way through to actually if you've got some worries, how can you process and work through some of those, you know, write those down. Having a routine, I won't read them all through, but it talks about reading the book. Actually, if that doesn't work, try and sleep, come back to reading a book. Having a playlist, and I mean all the way down to, you know, if it's not working, get up, through to don't be alone. It's almost reassuring to say, look, if you can't sleep, go and get someone, speak to them. So that's one example. Now I need to navigate back, and I mean, a couple of examples on the other one. Some are not as detailed, but I thought they're quite nice just to sort of as a reminder for that self-care thing, maybe at the start or initiating. Actually, what can I do? There's a few examples there. I'll go back down here, sorry. I just remind people this is kind of not live, so some of the links don't all work. And you can go through, there's a section for parent and carer support, so actually how can I, as a parent or a carer, get some more information and work through. And actually I quite like this one. This one's kind of got a list, I counted them out, there's about 35 different links to resources, organisations that can provide some sort of support, outreach, or places to go to bring some of that sort of reassurance, confidence building and stuff like that. All the way through from some football staff, young minds, some mental health support, the school nursing team, the CAMHS team with links into how to access them. I'll click on the first one because this was the one I tested out earlier. So Be Inclusive Football, it explains what it is. You know, it's a free session. It's open to children and young people, any special need, disabilities and or additional needs. You can also bring your siblings, which is quite nice because it might bring some reassurance. It explains what it is, what time it is. Actually, it goes into further detail. How can I register for this? Where can I get more information? And all the links are there. I won't click on them because, again, they might not be live. It explains where it is and who to contact. So it's a nice place. You can go, I might try that. And you don't have to go around hunting. There's the registration form. You can go into there. And very similar, I mean, if I go down, I thought, what one did I click on? Hillingdon Parent Carers for Family Hubs. So if I click on that one, where's it gone? For example, it just explains what the family hubs are, the children's centres, some of the services they provide, and actually a little bit more information, and then how you can actually go and get more information. So it doesn't go into too much detail here, but it gives you the link in about to access that and find that. So there might be an easier way to navigate, by the way, but because of internet, I'm going to keep going back to the start. And then there's the last one, I need urgent help. I won't click on that, but that has actually got the list of telephone numbers, so if I need help, it's saying, you've got 999 for this, you've got 111 for this. It's actually got the out-of-hours mental health support number, so if you need to phone someone out of hours, you've got that. You've got Childline, so actually if a child with a digital device can log on to this, didn't look up Childline thinking I don't know who to call, you can click on there and go for it, and you've got the Samaritans and stuff like that. 2 more minutes? Yeah, is that okay? I quite like this section here, Thrive, how can we help you? It goes through and it details different sort of conditions and areas and where you can get a bit more information. So you've got anxiety. So you can, as you can see, I'm hovering over it. It's quite live, it's interactive, it's explaining that you don't have to go into it. So you've got anxiety, depression, eating disorders, self-care, which I think we've done, but I think that's another link for it. You've got helpful organisations and your parent information. So if I click on the anxiety one, it just explains a little bit about it. You know, it makes it seem safe and normal and right, not you're different. You know, everyone can get this. I think that's quite a nice introduction. There is a link. I don't think these links help, but it's actually, if you do need urgent help, here you can click on here, and so you can access that. So if you're at a different level to someone else, you know what to do. And it just explains what causes anxiety, what some of the symptoms can be. It explains it. You know, you've got physical symptoms, psychological symptoms, and then some of the treatments that can go through. So if you go under there, it's recommended some things like CBT and areas like that. So, so yeah, I think that's very good. If I go back, there's 2 more sections that I will just quickly mention. So I thought this one was quite useful, helpful organisations. When I clicked on there, actually, you've got a list of some of the services. So I think overall there's about 100 organisations or voluntary and different things that are included in this directory. And it's when you click on sort of here, you can kind of see where you are. So, for example, if I click on the Young Minds, it just explains what it is, and it enables you to go to their website, so it directs you straight there. You haven't got to go somewhere else. And then the last one that I will mention, and there's probably so much more on here. I only had a little play with this evening because I thought I can't just talk about this little page here. I've got to show something. Oh, did that give me the right button? No. So under services, it should, if it works. I thought this was quite good. You can break down the list of services available by age. So, for example, if you've got a child under the age of 13, if you're 13 to 18, again, you come back to that parent-carer support piece, but nationwide support, and then obviously things like crisis support, and then the local support available. But I thought this particular piece here is quite useful, because if you've got a child in the 13 to 18, they can click on that and they could work through actually what there is locally for them. So I will leave that there, if that's okay, but like I say, this should be coming from March. I don't know when in March, whether it be the 1st or the end of March, but I know that this is the unlive version that feedback loop finished on the 13th, I think, of February, for all partner organisations involved in the development of it to provide any further development or queries or questions in order to provide additional information for this. And then it will be in the final stage for it to go live, and it will be available for people to see, use, and hopefully benefit from. So.
I'll go to Kim or Andres. You don't have to say anything. Was there anything you want to add at this stage?
Just to say, so we have 5 boroughs in CNWL, and Hillingdon so I'm going to give it a really good plug now, because this is the most advanced that we've got across all of the 5 boroughs, and there has been a significant amount of work that has gone into this across the partners. And really just a big shout out to Stacey and your team, because there's been a lot that has gone into this, and it will continuously be updated. But yeah, I just wanted to give you assurance that Hillingdon is way much forward than any of the other boroughs with regards to this. And the Thrive model is the national model with regards to CYP, kind of mental health wellbeing and emotional wellbeing, and really to kind of build resilience back into communities as well, rather than everything coming to kind of the core specialist services. It really is about how can we collaboratively work together across the system to determine what is available for a local community.
In the southwest.
I'm very pleased you've got that right, Nappy. So as Keith says, I'm here really to just illustrate really and showcase the work that's been going on in the southwest of the borough. And really what it's about is when we started talking about what the southwest priorities should be, we looked at the data and we triangulated the population health data with local intelligence and reports that we had from children and young people from Healthwatch in terms of their experience of what was happening. And what we identified very quickly was we had a younger cohort of people in the southwest, and consequently their needs are likely to be very different. We also looked at the Healthwatch reports and a PPL report about children and young people's mental health and well-being, and looked at the national data, and it was overwhelming in terms of the increase in numbers of children and young people sadly experiencing mental health challenges. And so we decided to make it a priority. So not knowing anything about children's services in Hillingdon, I went out and did a scoping exercise, and thankfully everybody was more than willing to talk to me. And I learned an awful lot and managed to gather some themes from talking to those services. One was there was real appetite to improve services and join them up a lot better, improve cohesion. The second thing was that there was a real willingness for everybody to work together, and everybody wanted the same things. So we started by having a workshop, invited people from across the system.
so that they could share their expertise, including looking at the Thrive model to see how we could align to the Thrive model, to talk about what initiatives we might want to pursue to try and make a difference to improve things for children and young people. And one of the overall sort of overwhelming themes was that children and young people, their families and carers were saying that they struggled to navigate the system. They felt they were bounced around the system. The GPs were telling us that, you know, they may only have a 10-minute consultation with a child, their family, that they've never met before, and they're trying to unpick what's been going on and get them to the right services. And it was evident that in Hillingdon we're very well served with children and young people services. I think at the time there was about 26 specific Hillingdon services. But how can you possibly know the details of 26 services when you're seeing so many people? So the outputs of the workshop were really, really beneficial. People got talking, they learned a lot just from being in the same room. But it was decided that we really needed some kind of role to, one, increase capacity within GP practices and primary care, and to support people to get to the right services first time. Especially as you think not everybody is digitally enabled or literate, not everybody's first language is English, not everybody can read and write, and then a lot of people have disabilities. So we started having conversations. As a system partners, we organised a group, a task and finish group, to get together with input from local authority, CAMHS services, a lot of the VSCE services, and trying to include the patient voice in that. And we applied for HIP funding to pilot a 1-year proof of concept role as the Children and Young People's Champion stroke coordinator. And although they were very much linked to primary care because they needed to be able to access the systems and the information around people and feed information directly into the GP record, we wanted them to be part of the community. And so they work situated in the Stronger Family hubs, because the things that young people were telling us was that they felt embarrassed to come to a clinical setting. They didn't want to be pulled out of class to have a special sort of session with somebody. They didn't want to be different, and so we set that up, and we're really lucky to be able to recruit somebody that had some experience in setting up a new service, and we recruited them, and they started in July time of last year, and they actually started seeing their first patients in August. But the nice thing about having them start so early was that they were able to contribute to the design and the model of that role. And what we really wanted to do was enable them and to have permission to change and evolve as we learn, because we only had a year at the time to prove this concept and really try and understand where the gaps were and what was needed. So the aim of the role was to help people get to the right place first time, increase capacity within primary care, and also try and identify where are the gaps. If we've got 26 services in Hillingdon, we should really be serving our young people really well. So why are people still falling through the gaps? So the role has been running now, and the person has been in it for really up and running properly since August, and the 4 months worth of data has been really, really impressive. Remember, this is only in the southwest, so it's only supporting practices in the southwest. What we found is, just from those 4 months, apologies, it's alright, I jump around because I've been doing it for a while. So 136 children and young people were supported, and there was an average of a 30% improvement in what they call their CYP ONS 24 wellbeing scores. So all of those people were reporting pretty much a 30% increase in improvement in how they were feeling. That actually equates to approximately 600,000 in terms of wellbeing value over a 12-month period, assuming the knock-on effects of somebody that doesn't get help and support at the right time or from the right place. The majority of the referrals came from GPs in the southwest, which we were really pleased with, because we wanted to try and release some capacity within primary care. And it was quite interesting because out of the 2 PCNs that cover the southwest neighbourhood, they chose slightly different models. One GP practice wanted the sort of process to be, if you were a person ringing or contacting your GP service, that the admin staff would ask a couple of really simple questions to identify how high a risk you were at, because obviously we wanted a safety net. We didn't want anyone to end up in crisis or not get a GP appointment if they really needed it. And they chose for the admin staff to screen those referrals, if you like, or those requests for appointments, and then refer directly into our CYP coordinator role, where the coordinator could actually contact the patient, offer them a slot at a time that suited them in a place that suited them. And the other PCN opted to keep their GP triage. So the patient would contact the surgery in the normal way, GP would triage that appointment and decide whether it went to the coordinator or not. And both have worked, but what is really encouraging is we haven't had any risks or any problems with the direct referrals to the coordinator role. So that's released even more GP capacity. And we estimate that we've released over 22 hours of GP practice admin time and approximately 80 hours of GP time during that 4 months. So it's had a real impact. And what they've been able to do is actually already start to expand and increase the referral route. So they don't just get referrals from GPs now, they get refers directly from Stronger Families and Children's Services. They're working very closely with the mental health teams and particularly the family help team. And we're looking to work with CAMHS team in terms of when they get referrals directly to them. If they're, I don't like the word rejected, but if they don't meet the CAMHS criteria, that they will refer directly to our Children and Young People's Coordinator. Because what we found in the early days was that out of all of the CAMHS referrals, a third of those didn't meet the criteria, and those poor people were really bouncing around the system. So next steps are to share the learning across the borough with the other neighbourhoods, and actually the north of the borough are looking to see how they can adopt the model and actually have their own Children and Young People's Coordinator. There's been a sort of a short-term report, if you like, written and shared, and in August we should have a sort of final report. But the good news is that the South West neighbourhood have agreed to fund the post going forward using the ARS money. So it is a real success story, and I think it really evidences how the good relationships that we've built in Hillingdon and how it makes a difference. So that's the CYP coordinator role, and just coming on to Keith talking about what we're aiming to do with Heathrow Villages. So we're aiming to use the learning from how we develop the CYP coordinator role to develop the Heathrow village coordinator role, because one of the things that we established, and thank goodness we did very early on, was the data and the metrics and automated reporting as much as possible, because that's really helped us to prove the worth and the benefits of this service.
Great. I mean, that's so good, because we found a few things that disturbed us, and one of them was that if people didn't meet the CAMHS criteria, they felt rejected, which just wasn't the right. They almost felt like, go away until your child is worse, which is obviously an awful message. But through both initiatives, being able to search what's happening in a better way, and also through the coordinator, it's not like you're rejected, here's a better answer for you. So that's really good. But anyway, so that's all sounds very positive. Great stuff. Councillor Chandel, you wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. Really wonderful website. It's really bright, it's colourful, it's warming, it's engaging. How are we going to promote this to the general public? Is it through schools, or is it through posters in libraries or something? Because there's something there thinking I would just go in there just to have a look, so that I can help family or friends.
This is where I will refer back to being the B team. I'm not sure what the process is. I know it is linked into the Stronger Families from the local authority. And funny enough, I'm actually just joining some of those meetings, so I'm going to be in a few of them next week. But I know the work they've done, and it will be coming out. It will need to be, if you don't advertise it, you don't know it's there, do you? But I'm a resident and I'm a father, and looking at it for this meeting, I mean, I was really impressed, which is why I emailed Nikki and said, is there any chance I can do a run through as opposed to a talk through? But I don't know what the official agreements are, but I know that will be a big part of it, because so what I probably suggest I'll do is I'll take some notes of this and I'll find out exactly and I can share it back, because I don't want to say something that I don't know the answer to, if that's okay.
Just quickly on the website as well, do we know how we're going to make sure it stays up to date, and if user journeys are going to be assessed and those type of things? Maybe that's something to take away to the 18, because obviously information can go out of date quite quickly, and also nothing beats knowing how people use it in real life.
Yeah, I mean, I do know a little bit about some of this. Well, just from, if you look at the website, when you go down there are some actually sort of user stories from there. I don't know if they're real at this stage or whether they are just made up for the purpose of, but there was a few in there and talking about that. And I also know that I believe we've got the Thrive model, at least the contract is there for the next 2 years, I believe. It is it's not going to run out in 6 months, sort of, for example. It's at least 2, maybe 3 years. So I know that that is the process for actually updating and working through some of that. So I know that one. But yeah, they'll be working, and part of that is working through the outcomes of some of that as well. So,
Councillor Puncher.
Thank you. I just think that this is a bit of feedback, is that this is a really fantastic outcome out of what was a really hard review for this committee to hear, and I just think this is so positive. It was something that was needed to have that cross collateralisation of all the services being provided. I was going to ask about the marketing of this, and if I could just probably not ask a question but suggest that actually schools are the places where we need to go to. A very valid comment was made that children don't want to be being singled out of classrooms. They don't want to be going into clinical spaces. What they do want is to be able to find that information sometimes themselves and to navigate themselves through that. And children, in my experience, that have been through in these spaces actually do go and find out some kind of help, or do go somewhere to do that. So I hope that schools is part of your kind of marketing space or activity. The one thing I will go into the report about was that there was something about this mental health support in schools, and I just wanted to ask about that, because I know that these supports that have been shared between schools, and I know you're talking about 100%, but the need in schools are actually quite more, the need is more than actually what is being delivered by the service. And I just wanted to ask about how we kind of, the data around meeting those needs and what we're going to do about that. But other than that, I just think this is a phenomenal contribution to what was a very difficult review to hear, and thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. If I just come back on the MHST, so the mental health support services into schools. So for Hillingdon as a borough, we were awarded what is called Wave 14, so the national Wave 14 of MHSTs. And across the London boroughs, we were awarded 2 additional services within Wave 14. So we have completely rolled out what is called Wave 11 across Hillingdon, and then with the introduction of Wave 14, it gives us 61% coverage of the Hillingdon schools. The national 100% target, which I think is kind of by 2029. So so for Hillingdon, it's one of the highest coverages across London. We have also managed to increase Harrow and Brent, so we kind of have that outer London cohort. But with our Wave 14, we are now fully recruited, and we did that recruitment in a month. It was, in all my years of MHST services, Wave 14 was the most successful in the sense of how quickly we did it. We have also, with regards to the MHST, so we hold a monthly kind of what we call a multidisciplinary forum in Hillingdon, which includes the GPs, core CAMHS, MHST and P3 organisation, which is the kind of key getting help CYP service for Hillingdon. And that's where they all come together, they talk about kind of complex cases, signposting, You know, so if they're not meeting thresholds for particular services, it absolutely is about using that service directory to determine who can meet the needs, or a combination. So it's not always about a young person just sitting with one organisation. They will very much be open to many, but our role in the system is to ensure that they're able to navigate that kind of what I call that complex web of care, because there are so many people involved. But the school stuff is going really well. The Thrive work will absolutely, the MHSTs can support that publication. They've very much been involved in its development as well.
I don't know if this is the right space to ask this question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. One of the things that came out of that review was people having to repeat their stories again and again and again, depending on who they were passed on to from pillar to post. And I just want to know, how is that being acknowledged? How is that going to be addressed? And how are we going to move forward with alleviating that as a barrier for parents and for children who don't, you know, if they're told it once, do they need to tell it 1,000 times to get the support that they need?
What I call kind of interoperability, so that, you know, we have statutory information systems, so we have health, and in health there'll be hundreds of different systems. We have local authority. Do we all talk to one another? Our systems, no, we don't. And I think, you know, that it's an issue nationally. We are launching some different initiatives within CNWR CYP services. So sometimes you'll hear it referred to as kind of the CYP passport. Our young ambassador services have, and I went to see it last week, have launched an alternative, and we want to roll that out across all services. So it may be that it won't sit on everybody's system, but actually for a young person or family, they're able to take that with them, so we're not kind of constantly repeating. And quite often the repeating is going right back to birth, you know, the questions of, you know, development, childhood, etc. And that's what we need to be able to move away from and concentrate kind of more on the immediate.
Thank you. Councillor Hagger. Oh, sorry, Sean, did you want to come in on that?
I was just going to say, I suppose the other side of it is actually around the developments, some of the transformation type stuff and developments we've got in some of the digital side. And I think we talked about this at the GP one, for example, but it's the new sort of like Blinks type service, which actually enables all of the different systems used by organisations to talk to each other and actually be able to upload from one system to another. So where notes are typed up, you should be able to transfer those over so it'll be seen in partner organisations. So that should support with that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Hagger.
Thank you, Chair. Really good. I loved the website that's going to be. I really like that. I love the colour and everything on it. Great that we're now interacting and we've got another mediator in, so to speak, posted. I know that sitting on this committee for quite a long time, actually many years, and one of the things has been self-harming and suicide. We know that from the mental health. Just looking at that, you know, on Thrive, I would like to put myself in the children's shoes. So here I am, 17, it's midnight, I'm self-harming, I'm depressed, I'm thinking of suicidal. Where can I go on that website? You might not be able to answer, but I'm just saying where, you know, what preventions could I be looking at on there that would go, okay, you know, if you're self-harming, we know that there's special tactics and preventions that we can help that person, and then obviously the suicide stuff, because it normally is, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's normally out of hours. Very rarely to be in school time or school hours. It's going to be out of hours. So how is that? So for me, that would be my most important point. How is that website going to help? How is Thrive going to make a difference?
So in Thrive, one of the 4 quadrants it's called kind of risk support. So that is that kind of urgent care end, if you like, of a pathway. So within the website, it will link you to 111. So there's the mental health element of 111. Our children's CYP, what we call our single point of access, 111 is 24/7. So there's always a CAMHS practitioner that is able to talk at the end of the phone. We have our 24-hour urgent care services that run out of the acute hospital. So Hillingdon, we have resources 24/7. there that support presentations at A&E, for example, and we have our ACT service as well, which covers Hillingdon, which is providing that crisis support in the community. That's kind of from a CAMHS element, but on the resources available, as I say, they will be able to access 24-hour support to talk, and it's all via phone, because actually if you do it over chat you run into all sorts of safeguarding concerns and you're not actually able to pick it up, so it is telephone links.
I'm going to state the obvious here, but I'm still going to state it. Can we just make sure that that is correct and those lines are open and they are working and they are there? Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Very similar to what my colleagues have asked. It's a great website and it feels really safe when you see it being used, so I commend you for that. I don't know if you've seen a TV programme called Heartstopper, and I just wonder whether, on the same vein of what Councillor Haggard was saying, could you safely say to a 12-year-old, go on to Thrive and find, could they be unsupervised, or is it recommended they're supervised by an adult? Because if you've seen Heartstopper and you see the character played, when he has questions about his sexuality at 15 years of age, he goes on, if you've not seen it, just for context, he goes online and he searches, and all he finds is the negative impacts of what the answer to his "am I gay" question, just for an example, and it was self-harm, bullying, HIV/AIDS, all the search things that came up when he was Googling that question. Is this going to be a safe place to say to a 13-year-old, if you're struggling, can you go on there alone, or is it recommended to be supervised? If the B team could answer. Thank you.
I'll give it a go, but we'll definitely take this back to the A team. In a sense of all of the content on there is it goes through a governance process, so nothing can be added without going through essentially the Thrive Forum. There's the working groups, and all of the materials are accredited, and they're accredited either that they've been signed off by a professional, for example, or they are national accredited materials. So from that perspective, it's not an open forum either. So it's not a public forum that has an open chat function, for example. And quite often, you're absolutely right. If you go onto social media or any kind of browser and you ask certain questions, you will get kind of the negative responses. You will not be able to do this on this website. As I say, there's no open forums attached to it at all.
So if I could just ask for clarity, so if I had a friend who confided me their child, and I do have a friend whose child is with CAMHS in another part of the UK, if I was to recommend Thrive in March, they can't just go online, Google it and find it. They would need to go through another partner.
No, they will be able to openly find it. Yeah.
Councillor Bells.
Thank you, Chair. And along with my colleagues, are really impressed with the Thrive website and everything. Things are really looking up. Just on the CAMHS masterclass for all the GPs in the borough, have the GPs bought into it? Because I know they can be difficult to work with at times.
They have. It was one of the best evenings I've had with GPs in many years. We weren't quite sure how it was going to land. It came about from discussions with some of the GP leads. So we pulled together what we kind of called a CAMHS masterclass. We had about 2 hours. It was online. It was really, really well attended and really respectful forum. The right questions were asked, and a really collective response. So one of the key actions that came out of that GP masterclass is that we have adapted the CAMHS referral form, which sits on the GP EMIS system. And we really listen to the GPs in the sense of when they do a referral, they will have hundreds of forms that come up. So we've got one single referral form for CAMHS from the GP system that goes directly into our CAMHS referral system. And we've used it as a blueprint now to other boroughs. And the work does continue, but it really has helped foster the relationships. It was really successful.
This is great. Sorry, Councillor, do you have another question?
Just not really a question, just a comment really. I was really impressed with your borough-wide play day where you got 1,900 families. That's impressive. I think we'd be looking for some tips for ourselves. And
but I think obviously for us this is a very positive story because we heard a lot of frustrations and sad stories when we did the review, and a lot of the ideas that we talked about definitely seem to be coming to pass, which is fantastic, which is really good. One of the things that we haven't mentioned yet, which I'd like to sort of ask a question on, is one of the other issues that we came across, I think, was bad communications. And, you know, the idea of, oh, you haven't met the threshold for CAMHS, like, my child is suffering, what are you telling me? Or getting sort of overly clinical letters about matters that are, you know, obviously very emotional for those involved. And one of the things that we recommended was that actually, the communication should be tested on the families, and they should talk about how the communication should happen. That's mentioned a little bit in the report. I mean, do you have any more information about whether that's been taken forward and how, you know, communications in this area has been improved to be sensitive to what the sort of families and children are going through?
I can talk from a CAMHS example. When we think about complaints, communication is always one of the highest reasons, and it's difficult to always get it right. And you know, we still do make mistakes, absolutely, and it's that continued cycle of learning. We've got participation and experts by experience that work into CAMHS, so they play a big part in the sense of what language do we use. How do letters get formatted? It is still probably overly clinical, and I'm not going to shy away from that in the sense of we are a statutory organisation. We do have, terms and conditions and regulations to apply to. But we are constantly considering. We are launching a piece of work across our CNWL CAMHS, which we're calling our CAMHS strategy. It's essentially a two-year business plan. But communication is one of out of the 5 key priorities. And we're using the Young Ambassador Service to support us with that. And we've also increased our experts by experience in the Parent Carer Forum to support us as well, because language is really important to get right. We haven't got it right. If I look at even our CAMHS website, it's really quite poor. This is going to show us up, Sean. So, we will take this to go away and do some work. But it is that continued cycle. So have we got it 100% right? No, we haven't. It is still an area of concern.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming to present to us. I mean, ultimately, that was a very positive, report back on quite a lot of the issues that we found and good progress being made. And it'd be really interesting to see how some of those ideas carry on going forward, such as how, the website works in practice when it's put out there. Also, the idea of having a sort of champion. I mean, my very crude maths, if you had free across the whole borough, that'd save about 1,000 hours a year. 3,000 hours a year for GPs. I mean, that sounds very good to me, plus people getting the best advice. So, following up again to see how this all develops will be really interesting, but thank you so much for coming. So you don't have to stay for the rest of our meeting if you don't wish to. So, thank you. Good. Right, so our next item is the Cabinet Forward Plan. Anybody have any comments on that? No? We're all fine? Excellent. Oh, yeah, good. Fantastic. And our final item is the work programme. Now, obviously, most of us can't see past May, beginning of May, but there are 2 things that I just wanted to mention. Firstly, we haven't put together the findings yet for our most recent review. That's definitely partly my fault through time and stuff, but I hope we can put something together for the next meeting and then get it sort of finalised online after if necessary.
Yeah. Chair, what I'd like to do is I've already drafted the bones of the report, so nothing about any recommendations, because we need to agree the recommendations before I can actually write stuff about them. So I've put together the basis of the report, so I've got that ready, and I just need to now actually work on the middle bit, which I hope to have, like you say, ready for the next meeting in March, our last meeting.
Yeah, definitely. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the Mount Vernon Cancer Centre consultation has now gone live. We have a sort of, those of us who are on the JOS, I think it's me, Councillor Plunger and Councillor Chandel, have been invited to a sort of meeting with all the different scrutiny committees of all the different areas that are affected. But yes, once the consultation is closed and the feedback has been got in, we'll let you know about that. Okay. Does anybody have any other views on the work plan or any questions? No? Are we all good? Okay, I'll bring this meeting to a close.